Hey everyone, welcome to this build a complete QuickBooks clone with no code using Bubble. I'm no code coder, real name Gareth or Gaz, whichever way you want to call me. I'm from the UK and I've been a developer for about 30 years, an actual coder. And I discovered Bubble about 3 years ago, just under 3 years ago. And I've been using it full time as my full stack development kit for about the last 14 months, and it truly is something special. But what I found when I first used it as a developer, and I'm sure whether you're a developer, a coder or not a coder, there's got to be a lot of skepticism around Bubble. It just seems too good to be true, and that held me back from really jumping in. I'm sort of about 2 years behind the journey that I could have gone on if I sort of delved in and went, no, not so sure, delve back in again. And eventually, sort of when I really got my hooks into it, I realised just how unbelievable this is. So to build out a system, a full SaaS application like QuickBooks, which, okay, isn't a full enterprise system, it isn't like an ERP system, but it's a fairly in-depth SaaS app. And to be able to build that and to show that you can build it in Bubble and how to build it in Bubble is really going to get a lot of people over that skepticism. Now, I know other people have attempted to build QuickBooks clones and things, but they sort of been quite small, kind of where they've taken one part of it and tried to dissect it and maybe done it in their own way. I really want to go deep on this one. And I'm going to call my app Books, okay? And just to differentiate a little bit, and this video series is going to be fairly warts and all. So in other words, because I know that this is going to take a lot of my time, it's quite a hefty project to build just as an app, but to build it as a tutorial course is going to be quite time consuming. So I'm not going to have the time to go back and do 1,000,001 edits and take everything apart. So, you know, and just as a disclaimer as well, full disclosure on this isn't one of those where here's one I've already built and now I'm rebuilding it for you. I genuinely haven't built this. I just know it's possible because of the type of apps that I've built. So hopefully you'll follow me along. This isn't going to be a short video series. This is probably going to go on for quite a while. You know, I mean, you're talking about a major app that's probably took QuickBooks or Intuit, the company behind it, years to build. And I'm going to build out the vast majority, as much as I can that's possible. A couple of things that we won't be building out. QuickBooks, these days, one of their big sort of selling points is that and actually it's not even a selling point because most other accounting systems do this as well, for small businesses, is they integrate with your bank account, so you can hook your bank account and pull the records in from your bank account. Now, QuickBooks doesn't do this themselves, okay? In fact, none of the big accounting systems do this themselves. They use a third-party API, a third-party service, and generally most of them use one called Yodlee, which is Yodlee, and it's quite an expensive service to subscribe to upfront. Now, to a big company like Intuit or some of the others, it's not a big deal. But when I'm building out a tutorial course, I'm not going to start spending that sort of money to show you how to do it. So we won't be doing that. If there's a way that Yodlee have a free API that I can use like in a sandbox, maybe, who knows, we'll just wait and see. The other thing as well is if you're in the UK, as I'm in the UK, there's a big thing at the moment over here called Making Tax Digital. At the moment it only applies to VAT, which is sales tax returns, whereby all sales tax returns or VAT returns have to be submitted through an accounting software. And obviously QuickBooks have jumped on the back of this and they're putting huge amounts of money into TV advertising over here, as are some of the others as well. Now, I have actually done this. I've got an app, quite a legacy app that is actually MTD compliant. So I've been through the process. I know what's involved. I know how to do it. The trouble is, you know, we can work in the sandbox. Maybe we can do something along those lines. But to actually get approved for Making Tax Digital is quite a process involved. You've got to get it properly recognised. You've got to do a demo to a member of the tax authorities, and it's quite an in-depth process. So I won't be doing that now. If you want to use this as a full-blown accounting system at the end of it, if you do develop this along with me, you know, without that in the UK, it's redundant. It just isn't going to work. So, but I won't be doing that as part of this course. Maybe in the future I might do it like as a bonus tutorial or something, just operating in their sandbox, going through that process. But it's fairly in depth. It isn't something that you can just knock together quickly. Okay, but these are the type of things these days that are making accounting systems worth their weight in gold compared to perhaps what they were in the past, where maybe a spreadsheet would do the job. Okay, so we just haven't got the time to go through all those processes. So listen, anyway, I've warbled on enough. My background, by the way, is in developing financial and ERP and fulfillment and accounting systems. So I do know this area quite well. I know the systems that are out there. I don't know, I used to know the old QuickBooks back in the day. I don't know QuickBooks Online. I've literally just signed up to a trial. So, you know, I'm not an expert at it by any means. I'm just going to look through it, and I certainly am not going to back engineer it from a technical aspect. I'm going to look at what it's doing, how it works, and let's see how we can put together our own clone. And then maybe, you know, we won't do an exact pure replica. Okay, we will try and do things our own way, try and do things in a better way if we can, and let's see how far that we can get with this, you know. But I promise you that I will stick with this until the very end. I hope that you will too. It's quite a process. But listen, thanks for watching. Let's crack on. I've got my spectacles ready. I've got my cup of tea. Let's get going. Okay, right, spectacular's on, my ugly mug off the screen, and we can crack on. So the first thing we're going to look at is navigation. How is QuickBooks handling navigation? So what I've done in Bubble here is I've just created a new app from scratch. We've just got an index page. So what we want to do really is to have a single page app, which is not the index page, because we might want to do something else with the index page. So I'm going to create a new page, which is where our app is going to live. It's going to be a single page app, so we're not going to have lots of pages everywhere. We're going to be building it as a single page app, which I think most people are doing these days. It's certainly the most snappier, more modern way to build an app. It does involve some complexities, but we'll deal with those as we go on. So I'm just going to call this one app. That's going to be our main page. And I'm also, because we're going to wireframe this out a little bit about the navigation, in fact we'll wireframe out everything that we do, is we'll create another page and we'll just call that wire. Okay, and we can do that. So some people like to use things like Figma or Adobe XD, things like this to wireframe out, or, you know, design their UI. That's fair enough, that's up to them. Personally, it's not something that I can do. When you can wireframe it out directly in Bubble and then use that design and to transpose it directly into your actual app. Okay, so let's just go and have a look at QuickBooks. I'll just log in a second and come back when I've logged in. Okay, so we've logged into QuickBooks, and this is like the dashboard that we've got along here. So we can see that we've got a kind of series of menu options. This is fairly straightforward to do in Bubble. We've got our little button there and our logo. As I say, our system is going to be called SureBooks. Oh, look at that. So when you click on the company name, you can then go straight into settings. Okay, I mean, we can do that. Personally, I'm not too keen. But let's look at navigation. That's what we're here to look at. So we've got all this down the side. That's fairly easy to replicate. And let's ignore this at the top for a minute. We've got a menu, which I think just closes the entire thing off. It would be handy if you had, like, I mean, I noticed there isn't any icons there. So yeah, ideally I'd like a smaller version of this with just like the icons displayed. Anyway, and then you can open and close that. You've got the company name, that's just a made up name that I've come up with. And so all of this can live in one bar along the top. So you've got like the user's logo, user's image, which there's not, I've not supplied one, so it's just got the first letter of my first name. Settings, I take it. There's no hints, by the way, when you go over these. Obviously that tells you help, search, notifications, I assume, and settings. That's fairly obvious, that'll be settings. And then you get like a drop down menu. Okay, that's fairly easy to do. Right, so let's focus on doing this and doing this at the moment. So let's go back to Bubble, and we're on our wire page. Okay, and the setting is 960 by 600. what I will do is we can just set that to 900 for now. 960 is what we want to start with. And what I want to do, I don't want to create a fixed layout with this. Even though this is only for the wireframe, we'll still do align to parent for now, because that just makes it easy for us to do that. Again, I'm not going to go through explaining how the responsive engine, that's now the default engine, so he's now kind of not the responsive engine, it's just the engine. But I'm not going to go into explain how it works. There are other videos out there that do that. I'll explain little bits and bobs, but let's focus on the job at hand. As I mentioned before, this isn't a beginner's course, a beginner's tutorial, so there are things out there that will do that for you. And I'll put links in the description, by the way, for all the things that I think will be useful if you're starting with Bubble, that may be helpful before you come to this. Right, okay. So we've set it to 960, and the reason why 960 is good is because we can kind of divide it by pretty much anything. And it divides by 320, which is kind of, from a responsive point of view, is really as small as you want to get it with a mobile phone display. So you don't really need to deal with it. I mean, ideally you should go all the way down to like 240, but you know, the phones these days have got bigger screens. It's only dealing with older phones that. And to be honest with you, this is the app that we're building on, this web app, is more for use on the desktop or maximum on a tablet. Creating mobile apps, that's a different subject in its own right, but still it would be nice to have it display okay on a mobile phone if somebody wants to do that. Right, okay, so the first thing that we need to do then is to create this navigator that QuickBooks had down here. So let me move this over so I can quickly nip between the two. So this thing that you've got there, now I don't know the size of it, but let's just build it out and then we'll see. So I'm going to drop in, what we're going to do, we're going to use a floating group for this. So this is from the containers section. So let's just drop that in there. And what we're going to do there, we're just going to align to parent for now. We might change it in a minute. So what we can do with this one, now floating group doesn't adhere to the usual responsive things because it's floating above the page. It's not actually part of the page. We're going to make it look like it is, but it's actually floating above the actual page. So we're going to have floating above elements. It's top to bottom. Okay, the layout, the height, if you look here in QuickBooks, that's top to bottom. Now obviously they've got a panel on the top which we're not implementing at the minute, so we don't have to worry about it. So what we will do is we'll set it to a fixed height, and it's going to be 100% of its container, which is the page. Okay, now obviously we don't want the width to be 400, that's too wide, but do we want it fixed width? Probably not actually, for now. What we want to do really is to set it to something that we can divide by 960, that being the page. So we don't want it 320, that's too big. So half of 320 is 160. So will that do? Okay, 160 and 160 for now. I'm just doing it this way. In fact, let's just set it to fixed width for now. That looks too small. So what's half of 160 is, God, my maths are terrible, 80. So let's add 80 on top of that. So let's make that 240. Okay, so just trying to make these numbers that kind of fit around. Now that's too big, so if we halve that, we get 200. 200 should be about right, I would imagine. Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so let's just make the color. So I don't know what color this is. What I will do, I will get I've got an app where I can just grab the colour, so just give me a second, I'll just go and grab that. Right, so my little graphic editor, Snagit, is here, so let's just grab my little pipette thing, and let's just grab it. I'm assuming there's no gradient in there, it's just a flat colour. Okay, so let's just grab the hex code from there. Okay, and go back to our bubble app, and okay, we'll do the same thing. We will just say that it is well, what we can do there is to set it as a standard floating group. So let's remove the style. It's a flat color, And then we've got our colour here. I did say this was going to be warts and all. There we go. Right, okay. Fair enough. Just with our floating group, let's make sure that we name it properly. My naming convention is to shorten the type. I begin the name with the type, shortened into just FG. And that way then I can, when we're looking at the elements tree, then we can see, where are we? Elements tree, and I can sort of see at a glance what they are. So I know what type it is and I know what the name is. So we'll just call this one, we'll call it main nav, okay? If you're relatively new to Bubble, it's very much a point and click development environment, so naming things is really important, otherwise you don't know what you're actually pointing to. Okay, so we've named that there. What we can do then, because we've just styled that, which we can do, we can create a new style, and we'll just call this, we'll call it, it's a floating group, so we'll just call it main nav, okay? Right, okay. Not that we'll probably need to use it again, but we just keep everything in styles. Okay, so then we've got this bar along the top that we need to put in there. Let's have a look at that one. So how high is it? It's probably about 45, something like that. High, the height of it. Okay, so let's just, this time, this will be part of the page, this won't be a floating group. Okay, so let's just have a group on the top. Okay, now because we made the page aligned to parent, that's kind of what's happening there. Let's just see what happens when we do that. Okay, we want to make this a row container because everything in it needs to be side by side up here. Okay, and let's just make the height fixed, and let's, what did we say about 45? Let's keep things even. 46, is that right, or is that high enough? Let's have a look at these buttons. We'll leave it like that for now and we'll see. Here we go. It's probably more like 50 actually. Okay, so what we can do with that, the width has got to be 100%, so we're just gonna, yeah, it's still fixed width. Percentage sign is 100. Okay, and that's going to go all the way across. Now, because we've put a floating group in here, it's sat above the page, so it's kind of like sitting above the left hand side of that. So what we need to do really is to mimic that this is actually part of our page by putting a group behind it. Okay, so what we can do then is let's add a group onto the page. So because of the way that we've set the page up, which is to be aligned to parent, it's done that for us, because in here we just automatically put it on the left center. Okay, so we don't want that. So what we need to do then, let's just look at the bigger picture here. Probably this at the top shouldn't be sat on top of the, actually on top of the main page. We need to do something slightly different. So yeah, so we'll just get rid of that. And with this group here, that's going to be our placeholder that's going to sit behind the floating group, is we will call that, we'll rename that group main nav placeholder. Okay, we're going to change that from a fixed to a column, and the width is going to be the same as a floating group, which was 200 and 100% height. So again, that's the actual container, which is the page. So what we will do there is 200 and change its percent, and it's 100% fixed height. Okay, so that sits nicely behind that. So why do we do that? Well, like I said before, is if we just got the floating group there, it's just gonna, whenever it appears, it's gonna hang over, float over the content in the page. Because the group is fixed on the page, it means that while that group is there, the rest of the page is going to sit beside that group. Okay, now to do that, we actually need to set the page from align to parent to be a row container. The reason being is that we've got the nav and then we're going to have the rest of the container. So we're going to need to have a container group in here that's going to sit beside it. So one of the things you could say is, well, why don't you just have the group, forget the floating group, just put all your navigator stuff on a group and then it's always static. Well, once you get into responsiveness, you don't necessarily want that navigation to always take up the space. You sometimes you want to make it available, but you want it to sort of pop out as and float over the rest of the content and then float back again, if you like. And all we need to do that is to basically make the group, either change the width of the group or make it invisible, and then straight away, once we know the screen is of a certain size, such as mobile or let's say a tablet in portrait mode, we can get the navigator out of the way, and that just makes it really easy for us to do that. And we'll show you that in a while anyway. Right, so what we need to do then is to add a group in here, which is going to be our main page container. So let's drop a group in here, sits nicely there. Make sure that we name it, and that is going to be our main container. To keep things short, I usually just call it a CTR, and I know what it is. Again, it's up to you which naming convention that you want. Okay, so we'll have a look at the layout in a second. Well, actually, no, we're going to need to change it now, aren't we? So if we look to QuickBooks, what's happening in QuickBooks on their main container? Oh, it's asking me to sign in again. That's a little bit annoying. Oh, that's right. Certainly looks to be. So if you look here, we've got it. We're going to have our header here, and then we're going to have, even if we don't implement this, we're going to have, if we look at this, we're going to have stuff below it and then more below that. So it needs to be a column, things stacked on top of each other. So we're going to change this to be, we're going to change the actual container to be a column, and then we can set this. So what we want to do there, we don't want it as fixed width. What we want to do is just make sure that we set a minimum so it doesn't go below a certain minimum. So let's say, where are we? So we say let's say 240. Let's say 240 is going to be our minimum width, and our minimum height, we're going to set that to be 100% of the page. Okay. If you hear any noises, my two dogs are in here with me and are now playing. So sorry about that. Anyway, let's crack on. So we've got our navigator and we've got our main container in here. So now we've got our main container, this is now when we can pop our group for our header along the top. So effectively what we've just dropped on there is everything that's going to contain all of this. Okay, and we're going to stack it on top of each other. So let's do that with a group. Okay, that's popped it nicely to the top. Now this is going to be a row, as we said before, on the top, because they're going to be all side by side. So let's set that to a row container, and width wise we want that to go all the way to fill the whole space of this container group, the page container. Height wise, again, I think we set it to 50 before. Let's make that as a set fixed height, and again let's make sure that we keep naming things correctly so that we can identify it in our elements tree and everywhere else as well. So we're going to call this Nav Header. Okay, so we can see here that the way that this lays out is it's very easy to say, right, FG, that's a floating group, that's a group, that's a group, that's a group within a group. Right, okay, so within here, if you have a look on we've got sort of two sections. We've got the one with the company name, and the one with the hamburger menu button, and then on the far right then we've got these buttons here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 icons displayed there. So we're going to need to separate these out. So the way to do that is have one group that contains these and another group that contains those. Okay, so we will just drag two groups into there. Okay, and another group into there. Okay, and what we will do, I'm going to just, we said 50, let's call it 54, and let's put some padding around it. Let's say top and bottom is I don't know, let's say we'll just do 4, 4, and then left and right we'll do 10. Okay, and let's have a look at these. So let's just name this one first. We'll call this group, we'll just call it left header for now. At least we know what we're talking about. And the same with this one, group right header. Okay, they're both fixed. They both need to be row because we're putting elements side by side. And same with this one, row. Okay, so let's set the height. The height of both of them needs to be 100%, as much as it can get in within the space. By the way, when you're doing this, one of the things that I trip up over all the time when I'm playing around with controls and with the engine, it's no longer the Neary, but it's just the engine, is that you're playing around with widths and heights and things, and often you change it and you forget to change the percentage to the pixel, or the pixel to the percentage, and sometimes you can be there for ages wondering why the hell isn't this working, and usually 80% of the time for me anyway, I just forgot to change that back. So just something to be aware of there. Okay, so we want this always to be on the left and we want this to always be on the right. Okay, they're going to be different sizes. Now the way we can do that is quite handy with Bubble, is we can, well, it's actually done it for us, is rather than do that or do that or do that or whatever, or we can actually do that, which is what they call space between, and it's just basically telling it to fill the entire space, and if there's room between them, then just close them off. The other way you could have done that was simply just to set this one to be sort of, if I just change that and just say, yeah, they're both left aligned. I knew it was going to happen at some point. The dog's playing with the toy. We'll see how far we get with having to stop. So we could just right align the right header, which doesn't seem to have worked. Oh, okay, I know why. Anyway, we don't need it. I was just going to give you as an example. Okay, so what we'll do then is we will set these, which ones are going to need the most space. So probably that one, because these are a fixed amount of space. Whereas this one with the name could be quite wide. So what we'll do with this one is on the width we will set this to a percentage, and I will just set that to, let's say, 60%. And with this one I will just set it to, let's say, 40%. Okay, or let's put a bit of a space in between, so let's say that one is actually 56%. So yeah, okay, so that does the job for us there. Again, we're just wireframing this out at the minute. We're not trying to put things in. I'm not going to go next and say, oh, where do we get our company name from to display. We're just wireframing things out. We'll come to that next. I don't want to go too long in this video because you'll get bored, and when people see how long it is, they won't watch it. So I'm acutely aware of that. So we've done that there. So what we can do then is to put the icons in here, and then we can put the burger menu there, and then the company name there. So that's fairly straightforward. Now I use rather than use the icon in Bubble, or even the material icon one, I like a plugin called Iconify. I don't know if any of you, if you've used it before, but I really like it. You can see I've got no plugins in here, so let's come to Iconify, because it just opens up like a huge library of different options for you. Let's have a look. Where Iconify, okay, it's free. Install that. Okay, and then we're done. Okay, what happens then is you then get the Iconify logo on there, the Iconify element option there. So then we can just sort of draw it in there, and let's see how many in there. Now what we can do here with this one, because I'm going to drop quite a few in, is I'm just going to set it to be space around. Okay, and then what we can do then is just drop a few more of these in, so I can just was it 5 or 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Okay, so with the space around, that tells it to just to space them accordingly. So there's our hamburger menu. Now obviously what we can do there is we can center that as we can with these. Okay, and the height is 20. I think that they're much bigger in QuickBooks, so let's set those to say 28. Okay, 28. And this is something that you learn with Bubble, is that the best thing to do is to drop one thing on, get that as you want it, and then copy it. Otherwise you have to go back and change everything. Right, let's do the same with this one. Okay, and we'll go into Iconify in a minute, and well, probably in the next video, and explain how you can pull the icons that you want in there. And then obviously then we've got this next. So I'm going to do, because we're going to put this right next to it, is what I will do on here on the group is I will say apply space between elements. So in the column gap, what we can do there is to say that we want a 12 gap. So when we drop this in, we're going to automatically get that gap without us having to specify a margin individually. Okay, so what I'm going to do with that one, again, I've not named these, but we'll go back and do that. But I'll do this one. So I'll just say T company name, and let's just call it as exactly as it is in. Obviously this will be dynamic in the final one. So we've got that there. Let's have a look at where we want it to be. The minimum height, we don't really want it to be a minimum height, so we will just center it. Again, we've got like a font, we need to look at that before we move on. But in terms of wireframing, the core navigator, we're sort of getting somewhere. Because I'm conscious of the time and I don't want to go too long, we'll pick this up in the next part and we'll finish the navigator. We'll do all of this in terms of wireframing, and then when we're happy with what we've got, we'll then copy all of that into our main app page and we'll start to flesh it out properly. Okay, so yeah, I think it's a good place to stop. We're good where we are. So I'll see you in the next one. Please like and subscribe if you get some value from this. Keeps me motivated, helps other people see the videos. So okay, until next time, take it easy.